Here's why knowledgeable agents ramble. There are several reasons. Sometimes they begin speaking before deciding on the main point. They are discovering their answer while they are delivering it. Sometimes they feel pressure to demonstrate their expertise. They believe the more information they provide, the more knowledgeable they will appear. But the client may experience that flood of information very differently. Instead of hearing expertise, the client hears uncertainty. Instead of feeling reassured, the client becomes overwhelmed. The agent may also continue talking because silence feels uncomfortable. They reach the end of a good answer, but instead of stopping, they add another sentence. Then another example, then maybe another explanation. Eventually, the strongest part of the answer becomes buried beneath unnecessary commentary. This is an important truth. A long explanation is not automatically a persuasive explanation. In fact, the longer and more complicated your answer becomes, the greater the chance the client will miss the point. Clients are rarely measuring your expertise by counting how many facts you can fit into a conversation. Instead, they're asking themselves, do I understand this? Does this make sense? Most real estate professionals do not struggle because they lack knowledge. They know their market, they understand contracts, they have attended training classes, watched webinars, listened to podcasts, and completed transactions. But then a client asks a direct question. Why should I sign a buyer representation agreement? Why do I need to get pre-approved before we start looking at homes? Why can't we list the property higher and come down later? What happens if the inspection reveals problems? And suddenly, all that knowledge becomes difficult to organize. The agent starts answering before deciding where the answer is going. One point leads to another, then another. They provide background information the client did not ask for. They repeat themselves, they add disclaimers, they begin answering questions the client has not even asked yet. And somewhere in the middle of the explanation, the client stops following. This is one of the most overlooked communication problems in real estate. The problem is not always knowledge. The problem is often in the structure. Welcome to the Time-Tested Mastery Podcast. I'm Mark Dolan, and I help real estate professionals develop the communication skills, discipline, and trust-based approach needed to build resilient, satisfying, and profitable careers. This episode is part of the message behind my 8-week Control Before Confidence speaking workshop for real estate professionals. During the first few weeks of the workshop, we've been working on the mechanics of communication. We have talked about how your face communicates before your words do. We have practiced clearer diction and stronger word endings. We have worked on resonance, pace, pitch, emphasis, breathing, and calm authority. Those skills matter. But a calm, confident voice cannot rescue a confusing answer. You can sound wonderful and still leave the client wondering, what was the point? What are you recommending? What am I supposed to do next? That is why week 4 of the workshop focuses on thought organization in real estate conversations. Because communication is not simply about what we know. Communication is your ability to help another person understand what you know. And those are not the same thing. So here's why knowledgeable agents ramble. There are several reasons. Sometimes they begin speaking before deciding on the main point. They are discovering their answer while they are delivering it. Sometimes they feel pressure to demonstrate their expertise. They believe the more information they provide, the more knowledgeable they will appear. But the client may experience that flood of information very differently. Instead of hearing expertise, the client hears uncertainty. Instead of feeling reassured, the client becomes overwhelmed. The agent may also continue talking because silence feels uncomfortable. They reach the end of a good answer, but instead of stopping, they add another sentence. Then another example, then maybe another explanation. Eventually, the strongest part of the answer becomes buried beneath unnecessary commentary. This is an important truth. A long explanation is not automatically a persuasive explanation. In fact, the longer and more complicated your answer becomes, the greater the chance the client will miss the point. Clients are rarely measuring your expertise by counting how many facts you can fit into a conversation. Instead, they're asking themselves, do I understand this? Does this make sense? Does this person understand my concern? Do I trust the recommendation? Do I know what to do next? Your responsibility is not to tell the client everything you know. Your responsibility is to help the client understand what matters most. One of the principles we practice during week 4 is simple. Do not begin speaking until you know where the answer is going. That does not mean standing silently for 30 seconds while you create the perfect response. It may mean taking one calm breath. It may mean pausing for 1 or 2 seconds. It may mean beginning with a phrase such as, the most important thing to understand is. There are 2 parts to that question. Let me give you the practical answer first. My recommendation is. Those phrases accomplish 2 things. First, they give you a moment to organize your thinking. Second, they tell the client that an organized answer is coming. That small pause can make you appear more thoughtful, more confident, and more credible. Many agents are afraid that pausing will make them look uncertain. Usually, the opposite is true. Rushing into an answer often communicates anxiety. A thoughtful pause communicates control. And self-control comes before confidence. Before answering an important client question, there are 3 decisions you should make. What is the main point? What does the client need to understand? And what should happen next? Those 3 questions can prevent a tremendous amount of rambling. Imagine that a seller asks, why haven't we received an offer? You could immediately begin discussing interest rates, online views, showing activity, buyer psychology, the neighbor's listing, seasonal trends, photograph staging, market conditions, and everything else you know. Or you could pause and decide, what is the issue? What does the seller most need to understand? What should we evaluate next? The second approach gives the conversation direction. The client does not need more information, they need guidance. During week 4, participants are introduced to several simple speaking structures. I'm not going to teach the entire lesson here because understanding the formula is not the same as learning to use it under pressure. That is where the workshop and practice sessions are designed to accomplish. But I do want to give you a preview. One structure helps you clearly state a point, explain why it matters, provide an example, and return to the recommendation. Another structure helps you describe a problem, identify its likely cause, and recommend a solution. A third structure helps you explain how conditions have changed from the past, what is happening right now, and what the current direction may mean going forward. These structures are useful because different questions require different types of answers. A buyer asking why pre-approval matters does not need the same type of explanation as a seller asking why showings have not produced offers. A client asking about current market conditions does not need the same response as a client questioning your pricing recommendation. When you have a structure available, you do not have to invent the entire answer from scratch. The structure becomes a container for your knowledge. And that does not make you sound scripted, it makes you sound prepared. There is a major difference between speaking from a structure and memorizing a script. A memorized answer can sound stiff. The agent becomes so focused on remembering the exact words that they stop listening to the client. Structured communication is different. You know the main point, you know the reason, You know the example you may use. You know how you intend to conclude, but the words remain conversational. This allows you to listen, adapt, and respond naturally without losing direction. The purpose is not to memorize every sentence. The purpose is to know where you are going before you begin, and learn to scale your answer. Another skill we practice is learning how to answer a question in 30 seconds, 60 or 90 seconds. Not every question deserves a 5-minute response. Sometimes the client needs a direct answer, one reason and a next step. Sometimes they need a brief example. Sometimes the issue requires additional context. Strong communicators learn to adjust the length of the answer to the needs of the listener. Weak communicators often give the same long explanation regardless of the question. They believe that more information creates more value. But value is not measured by the number of words you use. Value is measured by whether your words help the client understand the issue and make a sound decision. A 30-second answer can be more valuable than a 5-minute lecture. A clear recommendation can be more reassuring than 10 different possibilities. And sometimes the most powerful communication skill is knowing when to stop. This may be one of the most difficult lessons for sales professionals. You make the point, the client understands, your recommendation has been delivered, but then you keep on talking. You weaken your answer by continuing beyond the conclusion. You introduce another possibility. You soften your recommendation. You add qualifications. You create confusion where clarity existed only moments earlier. When the answer is complete, stop. Allow the client to process what you said. Invite the next question. Silence is not a communication failure. Silence gives the other person space to think. It also demonstrates that you are not afraid of the answer you just gave. Clarity strengthens trust. The deeper purpose of thought organization is not simply to become a more polished speaker. The purpose is to become a more trustworthy advisor. Clients are making significant financial and emotional decisions. They may be afraid of making a mistake. They may be uncertain about the market. They may be suspicious of the sales process. They may have received conflicting information from friends, family members, social media, and other agents. When you can take a complicated issue and explain it clearly, calmly, and honestly, you create emotional safety. The client begins to feel this person understands the issue, this person understands me, this person is not trying to pressure me, this person can help me make a decision. That is where trust begins, and as I often say, truth follows trust. People become more willing to hear difficult information after they trust the person delivering it. Your pricing recommendation may be correct. Your advice about financing may be correct. Your negotiation strategy may be correct. But if your explanation is confusing, defensive, or overwhelming, the client may reject good advice simply because it was not communicated effectively. Clarity is part of your service. Exposure is not enough. So listening to this episode may help you recognize the problem. But recognition alone will not change your performance. You improve by practicing. In the workshop, participants do not merely hear about communication structures, they prepare answers to real buyer and seller questions. They deliver those answers in different lengths. They record themselves. They listen for unnecessary details. They identify where the main point became unclear. They practice ending the answer with confidence, and they receive feedback. And then they do another repetition, and that is how their communication improves. Not just through the exposure alone, but through deliberate practice. The professionals who practice are the professionals whose performance changes. So I'm going to invite you to join an 8-week workshop. The Control Before Confidence Speaking workshop for real estate professionals is designed for agents who want to become clearer, calmer, and more credible in the conversations that shape their business. Over 8 weeks, we work on the physical, vocal, and mental skills behind effective communication. This is not about becoming a motivational speaker. It is about becoming more effective when speaking with buyers, sellers, prospects, colleagues, and clients. It is about learning how to organize your thoughts when the conversation is moving quickly. It is about responding to questions and objections without becoming defensive. It is about communicating recommendations with confidence without using pressure or manipulation. And it is about building trust through the way you listen, speak, explain, and lead. The workshop includes teaching, demonstrations, speaking exercises, practical real estate applications, and practice assignments between sessions. Because confidence is not something you wait to feel. Confidence is built through preparation, structure, repetition, and control. To learn about the next Control Before Confidence workshop, visit timetestedmastery.com or connect with me directly. If you are a broker, team leader, association executive, or company owner and would like to bring this workshop to your organization, I would welcome that conversation as well. Your experience matters and your knowledge matters, but your ability to organize and communicate that knowledge determines whether other people will benefit from it. So before your next important conversation, pause, decide on your point, think about what your client needs to understand, know where the answer is going, deliver the answer clearly, finish with confidence, and then stop when the answer is complete. I'm Mark Dolan, and this is Time-Tested Mastery. Remember, structure creates clarity, clarity creates confidence, and confidence strengthens trust.